Our story begins on a stormy night as our protagonist, Mike Enslin, makes his way to a hotel with an infamous haunted room. Mike is an author of generic horror tour books, traveling from place to place and staying at alleged haunted locations to write about and exaggerate his experiences. Mike speaks with the owners of the hotel to request their most haunted room. He is given the key after being warned about the room by the owners, but Mike brushes the warning aside with contempt and skepticism. Checking into his room, Mike half-heartedly inspects the room with his equipment. With no sign of activity, he gets bored and falls asleep. The next morning, he makes his way to a signing event he scheduled at a bookstore. His interaction with the handful of fans in attendance reveals he doesn't actually believe in ghosts or paranormal activity and believes it all to be fantasy. A young fan talks to Mike after the event and asks him about one of his older books, which she says feels more authentic than his newer books. She asks if the father-daughter relationship within the book is real. Mike says no, but his expression would suggest otherwise. Afterwards, Mike makes his way back to his home in Los Angeles and goes to the beach to surf. While in the water, a plane flying above him distracts him, and he does not see the incoming wave, which knocks him off his board. He washes ashore and coughs up water, miraculously not drowning. After recovering, he travels to the post office, taking up 2 parking spots like a professional narcissist, and picks up his mail. Sifting through his mail at a nearby restaurant, a postcard from the Dolphin Hotel piques his interest. On the card, the words, "Don't enter 1408" is written. Mike smirks, seeing the message as a challenge. Back at his home, he calls the hotel and tries to book room 1408. However, his request is declined. He even tries to book the room an entire year in advance, but is still denied. Thoroughly intrigued, Mike does some digging about the room's history. To his amazement, he discovers multiple people have lost their lives while staying in room 1408, and thus the hotel has not allowed anyone to book the room in many years. Mike contacts his publisher, Sam Farrell, over the legality of the hotel declining his attempt to book the room. According to Sam, by law, the hotel must allow people to book vacant rooms, and that Mike may have grounds to sue them if his booking requests continue to be declined. With the law on his side, Mike travels to New York and arrives at the Dolphin Hotel by taking a taxi. Taking in the incredibly lavish and grand entrance, he slowly makes his way to the front desk. A staff member by the name of Ms. Palmer cheerfully greets him and requests his information. Upon learning his name and the room he wishes to stay in, her demeanor changes to that of unease and shock. She quickly notifies the manager, Gerald Olin. Gerald introduces himself and brings Mike to his office. Mike tells Gerald he wishes to stay in room 1408 overnight. Gerald does everything he can to convince Mike that he should not stay in room 1408. He tells Mike that no one has lasted even a single hour inside the room alone. He also reveals the real number of fatalities from the room to be a staggering 56 people. Gerald even gives Mike expensive alcohol and detailed records of the fatalities. However, Mike stubbornly persists as he sees this as a jackpot of content for his next book. After a final tense exchange between the two men, Gerald finally laments and agrees to let Mike stay in the room. Gerald reluctantly hands Mike the key to room 1408, and they enter the elevator. Arriving at floor 14, Gerald and Mike part ways as Gerald never approaches the room unless he has to. Mike makes his way down the eerie hall, feeling a bit tense as he continues to read the records of 1408 that Gerald gave him earlier. Entering room 1408, Mike flips the lights on and closes the door. Starting his tape recorder, Mike explores each room as he expresses his disappointment with how bland and boring everything seems. After stopping briefly for a snack, he makes his way to the window and leans out of it, remarking on how unimpressive the view is. Suddenly, the radio beside his bed blares to life. Startled, he hits his head on the window pane before staring in disbelief at his bed. Not only had the radio turned itself on, but 2 pieces of chocolate had appeared on his pillow. For some reason, perhaps in pure defiance, he decides to eat one of the chocolates after turning the radio off. Mike does not seem to realize something is very wrong with the room, so he blames the hotel staff for pranking him. He searches his room for anyone who might be hiding but finds no one. Next, the thermostat breaks, causing the temperature in the room to rise. Becoming uncomfortable with the heat, Mike calls the front desk and asks for the hotel maintenance to fix his thermostat. While he waits, he uses his black light tool, which reveals nearly every single surface in the room is covered in bloodstains. He sits down and contemplates the bloodstains he saw, but just then the hotel engineer knocks on the front door. Mike greets him with relief and excitement. However, the engineer looks very scared and refuses to enter the room. He instead guides Mike on the repair process from the open doorway. Together, they manage to get the thermostat working again, and the room's temperature begins to lower. Mike is elated and even begins to offer a tip to the engineer. However, when he turns around, the engineer is already gone. Mike settles in and pours himself a drink from the alcohol Gerald gifted him, but just then the radio turns on again, startling him into spilling his drink. Mike shuts the radio off, but to his amazement, the numbers change to a timer and starts counting down from 1 hour. Mike uses his tape recorder and recalls Gerald's warning about no one lasting more than an hour. Just then, Mike's ears begin to ring, deafening him. He frantically looks out his window again, but despite the traffic below, all he can hear is ringing. Suddenly, the window slams down onto his hand as his hearing returns. Mike cries out in pain and rushes to the bathroom. When he tries to clean his wounded hand at the sink, the water turns scalding hot in an instant, injuring his hand further. Using towels to turn the sink off, Mike uses a bandana in his bag to wrap his hand. Just as he finishes, the radio once again turns on, eerily playing a song that says, "We've only just begun." Mike furiously rips the radio's cord out of the wall, which silences it. He tries calling the front desk again. However, the person on the other end does not respond to his cries for help and just starts listing meal options as if he is not even there. Finally, realizing something is wrong with this room, Mike quickly gathers his things and attempts to leave. However, the door won't budge. His key snaps in half and the doorknob even breaks off of the door. He tries kicking the door down, but nothing happens. Next, he sprints to the window and tries calling for help and sees someone in the building across the street. Mike bellows and waves to get the person's attention, but to his confusion, he realizes it's a reflection of himself. As he watches, an eerie figure rushes up from behind his reflection and murders him with a strike to the head. Mike swivels around just in time to see the same figure swinging a hammer at his head. He manages to dodge a couple swings before being cornered. He shields himself, waiting for the killing blow, but it never comes. When he opens his eyes, the figure is gone. Desperately trying to understand his situation, he remembers the alcohol Gerald gave him and the chocolate he ate earlier and suspects he was drugged and that he is now hallucinating. Just then, the TV turns itself on and shows him a video of him being happy with his wife, Lily, and his daughter, Katie. The footage invokes deep emotion from Mike as he reaches for his daughter, but then it shuts off. Mike hears a baby crying and a woman humming through in the room next to his and starts banging on the wall, crying for help. However, this causes the baby's crying to grow to the point where Mike cannot hear anything else. Panicking, Mike hurls a chair at the wall, which cracks the wall and silences the crying. The cracks spread and the wall ominously begins to ooze blood as if it was alive. Inspecting the floor plan on his door, Mike calculates the distance to the next hotel room and makes a daring escape attempt by balancing across the building ledge. After making some progress, he realizes all of the windows, aside from his own, have disappeared. Horrified, he begins rushing back to his room's windows. The appearance of a ghostly woman in the window almost makes him fall. Clinging on for life, he watches as she sorrowfully leaps from the window. The window slowly begins closing on its own, but Mike manages to jump back in right before it snaps shut. Looking back at the floor plan, it eerily now displays his room alone and surrounded by darkness. The room shifts as the world through the windows turns into a brick wall and the lighting changes. Even the hallway outside his door is gone. Mike has a brief vision of his daughter Katie in a hospital bed. Snapping out of the vision, he checks his phone and laptop to see if they have a signal. He manages to get a connection on his laptop and immediately calls Lily in a video chat. Petrified, he tells Lily that he is trapped and asks her to call the police. When he tries to explain further, the sprinklers suddenly turn on and cause the laptop to shut off, infuriating Mike. He shuts the sprinkler off, but the damage is done. Next, he climbs into the vents and tries crawling to the other rooms. However, the other rooms are ominous visions of Lily and his father. As he makes his way further, he comes across a skeleton. As he gets closer, the body comes back to life. Horrified, Mike rushes back to his room. The creature races after him and manages to grab his leg just as he reaches his room's vent. He kicks it away and falls back into his room, safe from the creature but still trapped. The thermostat breaks again and the room rapidly becomes extremely cold. Mike starts a fire and huddles near it for warmth. Although there is very little he can do at this point, his laptop lights up as it has amazingly somehow been repaired. Mike rushes over to answer the incoming call. It is Lily. She says that not only did she call the police, but that they had arrived at Dolphin Hotel and were standing in room 1408, which was empty. Mike is horrified, but before he can say anything else, the laptop glitches and a supernatural version of himself appears in the webcam instead of him. To Mike's dismay, the fake Mike asks Lily to come to room 1408. Mike knows this is a trap and yells at the screen. Just then the room rumbles and explodes with activity as debris flies everywhere. One of the walls caves in and water floods the room. Mike briefly sinks before swimming for the surface. He miraculously resurfaces at the beach he was surfing at the other day. He washes ashore before passing out. When he wakes up, he is amazed to see he is in a hospital and Lily is by his side. Mike explains what happened to Lily. She says she never heard of the Dolphin Hotel before and that he should rest. Over the following days, they begin to mend their strained relationship. One night, they go out for dinner and all seems well. Just then, Mike sees a waitress who looks exactly like the ghostly woman he saw leap from the window earlier. Startled, he does a double take and realizes he was just hallucinating. The next day, Mike is overflowing with ideas from his experience in room 1408, so he writes an entire draft for a new book in record time. He takes the draft to the post office to have it delivered to Sam Farrell, his publisher. However, as he reaches the counter, something feels very ominous. All of the workers turn and glare at him. Next, all in unison, they begin to destroy the walls of the post office, which reveals room 1408 underneath. Mike realizes he has been hallucinating all of this and never actually escaped the hotel. He finds himself back in room 1408, which now looks decrepit. Mike then hears his daughter's voice calling to him. He knows he is hallucinating, but he does not care. Falling to his knees, he opens his arms and embraces Katie. It is revealed that Katie lost her life some time ago due to cancer, which was also the cause of his relationship with Lily falling apart. He tells Katie they can be together forever and that he loves her. However, at that moment, she passes away once more. Mike cries in despair, sorrowfully whispering, "Not again." Suddenly, the radio blasts out loud music, and Katie's body explodes into charred pieces. Mike's sorrow turns to rage as he begins breaking everything. As Mike collapses in exhaustion, the radio's countdown hits 0. The moment it does, the room is reset back to its original state, and the radio's countdown resets to 1 hour. The phone begins ringing, and Mike picks it up immediately and asks why the room doesn't just simply kill him. The voice on the other end cheerfully remarks that he can either relive the hour again and again or take his own life. Mike realizes this is what happened to all the other people who got trapped in this room. The voice on the phone calmly asks him if he is ready to check out. When he says no, the voice responds by saying that his wife has almost arrived at the Dolphin Hotel. Melting demonically, it tells him he will never escape. Mike reflects on his selfish life and decides to go out on his own terms. He creates a Molotov with the alcohol Gerald gave him and lights the room on fire. He lights his cigarette and accepts his fate. The alarms in the hotel are activated and everyone begins evacuating the building. Lily arrives and informs the police about Mike, but it is too late. The windows explode from the flames as Lily looks on in horror. The next scene is Mike's funeral. Lily sorrowfully states that Mike and Katie are now together. Once the funeral has ended, Gerald introduces himself to Lily as the manager of the Dolphin Hotel. He offers her a box of Mike's belongings that they recovered from the fire, but Lily declines, saying that she wishes to move on. Back in his car, Gerald decides to open the box and listen to the tape recorder. Gerald listens and can hear both Mike and Katie. He catches a glimpse of a child running in his rearview mirror and thinks it is Katie. However, when he shifts his mirror to get a better look, Mike appears in his back seat as a charred husk. Gerald is frightened and swivels around to look, but Mike is gone. Haunted, Gerald puts the tape recorder back in the box and drives away. This tale concludes as we see the spirit of Mike standing calmly in the ruins of room 1408, looking to be at peace. He hears Katie calling for him in the unknown distance and disappears with a wave. And that is the end of today's tale. Thank you for stopping by Recapiverse. Be sure to comment any thoughts you have down below. I would also be very appreciative for any likes or subscriptions given. The outro and description of this video will eventually contain other videos and playlists of mine that you may like. If you made it this far, thank you, and as always, stay safe, watch out, and take care.